How much money would you be willing to spend on something that doesn't work? Probably not a lot. Yet each and every year, the government spends hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on ineffective climate policies that haven't reduced a single gram of New Zealand's net carbon emissions. Climate change activists should rightly be outraged, but often they are the ones egging the government on. That's because the emissions trading scheme is not something many people understand, but if it is left to do its job, it makes almost all other climate policies completely redundant. The emissions trading scheme, or ETS as it is known, is the primary way that greenhouse gas emissions are governed in New Zealand. The scheme covers every sector of the economy, excluding agriculture. The government produces a carbon budget which determines how many tonnes of net emissions of carbon dioxide or its equivalent can be produced in any given period. Net emissions are the total amount of emissions, such as from car exhausts, minus any offsets, like from planting trees or other carbon capture technology. These budgets cap net emissions at a set level across the entire economy and are slowly reduced over time. Companies who want to emit must purchase a carbon credit from the government, which entitles them to emit 1 tonne of carbon dioxide in that period. But here's the kicker. There is only a set amount of credits available, so companies must bid against one another for the limited supply of credits. After purchasing carbon credits, companies are free to buy and sell these credits among one another depending on their needs. This means that if a company finds a way to reduce their emissions, they can sell their credits to someone else to use and keep the profits. This creates strong financial incentives for companies to reduce their emissions. And if it is too expensive for them to do so, they will pay another company to reduce theirs to compensate. It means that emissions are reduced in the cheapest and most efficient way to the economy as a whole. But because of how the ETS works, if the government tries to reduce emissions in one sector or company through policies such as taxing, regulating, or subsidising certain activities, that company will simply sell their credits to someone else. Either way, those emissions will still occur. That means that every climate policy over the last couple of years, with the exception of the few focused on agriculture, has not contributed to any reduction in our net emissions. Whether it is taxing farmers and tradies buying new work utes to subsidise Wellington bureaucrats buying Teslas, or providing hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer-funded subsidies for our largest companies to switch to renewable forms of energy generation, there is significant economic cost for zero environmental gain. Unfortunately, feel-good policies, even with the best of intentions, simply don't make a shred of difference when it comes to climate change. Subsidising Teslas and EVs may reduce emissions in the transport sector, but that simply allows fuel companies to sell their credits to businesses in other industries such as manufacturing. This is called the waterbed effect, and it's the most important climate policy you've never heard of. Imagine you have a waterbed. If you push down one part of it, the water simply moves and rises somewhere else. The only way to reduce the amount of water is to let some of it out. Likewise, if you push down emissions in one company, they move to another company. The only way to reduce net emissions is to lower the cap of carbon credits allocated each year. But don't take my word for it. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has also stated that if a cap and trade system has a sufficiently stringent cap, then other policies, such as renewable subsidies, have no further impact on net greenhouse emissions. Now, there may be instances where the ETS does not function properly, such as when the climate change minister sets arbitrary minimum and maximum prices for carbon credits, or releases more credits when the price gets too high. These are problems with the design of the scheme rather than the principle behind it, and can easily be fixed by a climate minister brave enough to focus on a no-nonsense, robust system. If climate change truly is my generation's nuclear-free moment, then we should be working to make the most robust, low-cost, and taxpayer-friendly emissions trading scheme in the world for other countries to copy. Currently, we're making the fight against climate change far more expensive than it needs to be, and that makes our system look less appealing to other countries. If other countries see our government consistently undermining our own system, wasting billions of dollars and regulating businesses into bankruptcy, They will simply decide that reducing emissions is not worth the cost. Perhaps those who talk the loudest about the climate change emergency, but refuse to believe in the effectiveness of the emissions trading scheme, should take a look in the mirror and consider whether they are the ones standing in the way of global climate action. If you care about the climate, you should care about the ETS.